Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? Today I'm going to be discussing why students shouldn't have exams. Now, I'm going to be proposing alternate solutions to these examinations that students have, but I'm just going to be proposing better solutions and more effective solutions than what we currently have, which is an exam-based system. First, I'm going to start by combating point of views of people, instructors, and educators that think that exams are the proper solution. And then I'm going to discuss why exams aren't the proper solution and why there's alternate solutions that could be more effective. So let me begin out by saying a lot of people are going to say that students work harder when exams are at stake and when it counts towards a grade. And I completely agree with that point of view. However, I'm just saying my proposal is that these exams shouldn't be what primarily encompasses a student's grade. Nowadays, we have final exams that are worth 50 to 60% of a student's grade, and what is a student to learn from an exam that composes 50 to 60% of the grade? A student, just as I'm going to discuss later, going to remember this material for just a few days, not even so. So at the end of the day, these students aren't benefiting from this knowledge and just are pretty much just having a contest as to who can memorize better. Also, other educators are going to say that examinations is the only way to properly assess student knowledge, and I completely disagree with that because exams aren't going to be the real life scenarios or real world scenarios, so I'm going to apply that in the real world as well. So let me begin out by saying that today, in today's modern school system, teachers teach towards a test and towards students passing a test rather than towards educating a student. So for example, in a common question that students ask nowadays is this going to be on the exam? Should we know this for the quiz? Is this going to be on our homework? Now, these are common questions that students ask all the time in my classes and all the time in your classes as well, too. Now, students are asking about this just because they're only concerned with the material that they're going to need to know for the exam. Any material that's not on the exam or the quiz or the homework or that's going to impact their grade, they're not going to bother to learn. Just because at the end of the day, that's all they're concerned about is their grade. And as an educator, you shouldn't be teaching towards a test, but rather teaching these students how to properly utilize this knowledge in real life scenarios and in daily life situations, as this is when it's going to be actually applicable. The student has to learn to absorb, analyze, and then utilize this acquired knowledge in a daily life or real life scenario. And that's what today's examination system fails to do. Now let me move on by saying that every individual has a different learning curve. Some people may be visual learners, some may be oral learners, some maybe like to be hands-on learners. So you have to be able to appeal to the wider audience. A lot of students aren't very good test takers, and there's some students who are very good test takers. So you're going to see those students who are very good test takers perform well on all of your exams, even though they might not know the material the best. Now, how is that a proper way to analyze who's learning the best and who's the best student per se? When it's a student that's a good test taker is just performing well and just able to do well on the exam, when there may be other students in the classroom who are learning the knowledge better and actually applying it, but not able to perform as well on the exam for whatever reason it may be, whether it's stress, whether it's fear, whether it's anxiety, whatever it may be. Some students are just better test takers than others, and everyone has a different learning curve. So you have to be, as an educator, you have to be able to appeal to all different learning curves and not just to only the test takers. Moving on, I want to say that current exams are more of a memory retention test. They're not a way to analyze or assess how a student's learning or how a student is acquiring the knowledge. They're just a memory retention test. So a common theme in high school and college is cramming. Students will go into a library 2 days before the exam, study for a bunch of hours, go into the exam, blurb out what they just memorized, and then 2 days later forget the material and forget everything they just learned throughout the entire semester. Now, I mean, it's not the fault of the student, and it's not the fault of the instructor, it's the fault of the education system. The fact that there's so much pressure lying on this one exam that students are just forced into this scenario to memorize and pretty much blurb out what they memorized in order to do well on this exam, since this exam counts for so much of their grade. Now, in real life, you don't have these things that compose so much of your grade, I guess you could say, or so much of your career or success based on one little exam. It's not an exam, it's not a written exam, it's nothing like that in the real life. In real life scenarios, you would apply the knowledge that you learned, you apply everything in the classroom to real life scenarios. Now let me give you an example. For example, in today's computer programming classes, or computer science classes, a lot of students are given knowledge by the instructors who are teaching them up front on the PowerPoint, or maybe giving them written notes. And then at the end of the day, they're giving a written exam to see how they're applying the knowledge and assessing the material that the professor is giving. Now, in my point of view, this is completely wrong. If it's a computer science or computer programming class, the students should be asked to reinterpret and analyze what they've learned and apply it effectively. So, for instance, if it's a computer programming class, the students should be given a computer and given something to program, or whatever they may have learned in the classroom, rather than giving a written exam on something that is not going to be applicable to the student's real life scenario or real life situation. Now, all in all, I just want to say that exams aren't a standardized way or standardized method, as some students, like I said, are better test takers than others. Now, to standardize this method, I propose that students be given an opportunity, like I said before, to apply the knowledge that the professor gave them and apply it in real life scenarios or real world scenarios, so they can go out into the field and actually do something based on what they learned, and the professor can analyze them and assess them and grade them based on that, rather than based on a written exam that's never going to come up later again in the student's life. Now, there's universities like Hampshire College and UC Santa Cruz that already apply this system and already use it effectively, and students coming out of this university pretty much stack up fairly well against other students from other universities, even though the names aren't that well known. So, to sum it all up, I just think that examinations are a poor way to analyze a student's learning ability, and I think that having a student apply the knowledge that they learned and using it in a real life scenario would demonstrate the student's learning capacity and whether this student is actually learning and gaining knowledge within the classroom. Thank you.